I remember it like yesterday. It was a beautiful summer afternoon in Dayton, Ohio. I was there visiting my parents while living in Arizona in 1997. I still can picture it now. My mother sitting in her favorite seat, in her favorite room, with books, her needlepoint, and the news on the background. At that time, I was the only one home with her. I looked over at her, and I walked over and sat down, and I said, "Mom, can I ask you a question?" And with the smile of her face that she always gave me, she said, "Sure, what is it?" I looked at her and I said, "Do you have Alzheimer's disease?" Imagine that, asking your mother a serious question and seeing the look on her face. What she didn't know at the time is that I already knew she had Alzheimer's disease. You said, "Well, how did you know?" I knew because when I lived in Arizona and went to school there, my mother used to write me cards, wonderful cards. And she had the most perfect penmanship. She was a 4th grade elementary school teacher, and her penmanship was just beautiful. But over the years that I lived in Arizona, her penmanship started getting worse. And at that point, I knew she had the disease. So when she looked at me, I was wondering the thoughts of her mind, what was going through. And all of a sudden, I saw her tear up, and the tears started coming down. She said to me, "I don't want to be like my mom and dad who died of this disease. I'm scared. I don't want to be a burden to my family, and I don't want to live from place to place to place like my mother had to." And at that moment, I gave her the biggest hug with tears in my own eyes. But what I didn't realize at that moment that I realized today was that was my quest to find other care. That was another point to find an option of care for people with Alzheimer's disease. So as we look back and see what were the options for individuals who have Alzheimer's disease, because we know that at some point, individuals with the disease cannot live at home anymore for multiple reasons. It's that hard decision they know they have to leave. So if we look back and we see our elderly were taken care of in their own home with multi-generations. You lived with your families, you lived with the grandchildren, and you learned about aging. However, in the early 20th century, Alzheimer's wasn't as large. We may have had that uncle who was a little strange. We may have had a relative who was a little bit forgetful. But people needed options. We're always striving in our country to find something better. We're always trying to find options that can benefit ourselves or others. So next came the nursing home or skilled nursing facility, a place where we can send our frail elderly to get medical help. But that was the only option. It might have been the right option for others, but not for some. So as the country moved forward and we find in other ways we take care of seniors, we came up with assisted living. Another place you had an option to have someone go to live in a community where they can be taken care of. And assisted living's beautiful communities, places where we can live together as we age, common meals, activities. However, it's still not your home. We always go back to where we want to live in our home. As we move forward in our country to find ways again to have Alzheimer's care and what we can have, came the next step. In the 1980s, in the state of Washington, they came up with an idea of what we call residential care homes. Many of you are probably looking at me, what is a residential care home? They aren't very popular here in Ohio, but out west, they're growing like crazy. A residential care home is that what it is, a home in a neighborhood. One thing that I've learned with working with Alzheimer's residents over the last 30 years, it's about engagement. As human beings, we are always about engagement. We want to be with other people. We want to be with things and activities. We want to talk. However, as we get older, we are isolated from society. That to me is, I think, my biggest quest, was the fear in my mother's eyes about being isolated, from going to one place to the next and living in environments where she would be isolated. And for her, it was a great fear because she was the most social lady. If you knew her, you would love her. Everybody knew my mother. She was that lady who talked to everybody in that grocery store line, who was here or there. She made friends everywhere we went. But her biggest fear, again, was being isolated because her parents went through that. So as I looked at my quest to go further and saw about this new idea while living in Arizona as a nursing home administrator, it was fascinating. A residential house where individuals with Alzheimer's disease can live in a home with a living room. To live with others, usually up to 8 individuals in these homes, to live life as normal as possible. You're able to sit on the couch and read comfortably the newspaper. You're able to go outside and take a walk down the street. Think about that. When your mind is changing and you're losing your abilities and everything is confusing, but to walk down a street that you've walked for years and years and years of your life and still be able to wave to the neighbors, to see the trees, and to sit outside on that front porch listening to music is life. It's dignity. It's respect. To be able to sit in the kitchen and still make cookies, and to do house chores that you've done your whole life, to make people happy. You're able to do that in this environment with Alzheimer's disease. You can pass out Halloween candy. Think about that. How many people are excited to get their kids dressed for Halloween, to walk outside or even pass out Halloween candy? Why, as we get older, have a disease where we cannot participate, that we can't sit and pass out Halloween candy or put on a witch's hat and still celebrate that excitement we have for that holiday? That quest was there. The light bulb lit up to my eyes that this is the option that I wanted for my mother. This is the place where my mother can be comfortable. She could be safe, and she could live life as normal as possible. So in 2007, I moved back to Columbus, Ohio, and started my first residential care home for individuals with Alzheimer's disease. Wow, I remember that day. I picture that day when I first opened it up to have that open house. My family came, my mother and father came, my friends came, and other people in the community that I was trying to show this is how we should take care of people with Alzheimer's disease. All those other environments are right for the right reasons for the right people, but it wasn't right for my mother. This was the part that I felt was right for my mom. So that night, when everyone was coming through, and I was proud that I started this new idea that no one has ever done in Columbus, Ohio, or even Ohio, or really east of the Mississippi. I was standing there talking, and all of a sudden, I feel a tug on my shirt. And I look, it's my mother. She said, "Evan, can we talk?" I said, "Of course we can talk, Mom." So my mom and I walked out to the porch, probably my favorite spot of that house, that first house. And we sat down, and she looked at me, and she said, "Evan, I'm going to live here one day, aren't I?" With the same tears coming down when I asked her 10 years earlier she had Alzheimer's disease. And when I looked at her, I grabbed her, gave her the biggest hug that I could ever give her, and I said, "Mom, yes, you will live here, and you'll get the best care ever." And 5 years after I started that home, my mother moved in. She lived there for 4.5 years and succumbed to Alzheimer's disease in that home. And at that point, when I realized of 10 years of a quest to find options, to be innovative, it was for my mother and many other mothers out there and fathers. Thank you.